Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to How Does Artificial Intelligence Actually Work? If you were like most people on Earth over the past couple of years, months, you've probably been like, what is going on with AI? AI is absolutely everywhere. It's being jammed into everything. It's being jammed into Google. It's being jammed in my phone. It's being jammed into every single application on the entire world. And then ChatGPT, what is it? How can it answer science questions? And then also writes an essay for your English class if you want to. Also can roleplay as your anime boyfriend if you want on Character.io. Also can write poem about Joe Biden's toenails. It can program a Flappy Bird clone. It can pretend to be Pajama Sam and go clinically insane. Literally, is it alive? What is happening? Like, what is this thing that everybody keeps talking about? I'm scared. If you are like me 2 years ago, this is maybe what you've thought. Ah! What the fuck is going on? Why is this thing everywhere? Why can it talk to me like it's a person? I'm scared. But I have good news. Actually, good news. By the end of this, we're going to simplify it a lot because no, it's not alive. It is literally just a math equation. We're not going to die. Well, actually, we might die, but not because it's not alive, okay? Math is even worse. Maths. So the point of this presentation is to explain to you how a math equation that we have designed as human beings can make us feel like we're talking to a human kind of, and it can do all this crazy ass shit, okay? So let us begin by talking about what ChatGPT actually does. It just predicts the next word in a sentence. It is an algorithm. It is a math equation that predicts the next word in a sentence. Disclaimer, I'm simplifying things here. Technically, it's tokens. For this presentation, I'm going to be simplifying things. But all it does is we came up with a way to predict the next word that a person would say. You might think, when I say that, why would you care about that? What is possibly the value of predicting a single word? Why is that useful? Well, it turns out if you do that, you can actually kind of complete sentences. So this is actually how an AI works. Again, asterisk. Go ahead, chat. Predict the next word for this question. What is the name of George Lucas's famous space movies? It's not bald. Right. The next word is star. That is what ChatGPT does. This is what an LLM AI does. Okay, but now here's the secret to these things. Even though all it does is predict the next word. What if you were to ask it the whole question again, but you move this word up to the top? So what if you now ask, what is the name of George Lucas's famous space movies? Star. What is the next word here? Not Trek. That's right. It's wars. And that means just by predicting the next word that a person would want to hear, we have actually created a final response, Star Wars. And turns out we can do this a lot. If you just predict the next word, you can actually answer a lot of questions. What is the popular MMO made by Blizzard Entertainment? What is the next word that a person would say? It is Mario. Nope, not Star Wars, not Overwatch, not WoW. I mean, I guess technically it could be, but it's gonna be world. And then we loop it. We put world up at the top and we ask the AI the exact same thing. What is the popular MMO made by Blizzard Entertainment? World. It is obviously of. And then we ask the question again, what's the next word now? And then it's Warcraft. And by doing this one word at a time, we have asked a question and gotten a full answer. Okay, I want you to predict the next word of this. Generate me a fantasy creative story about DougDoug and his Twitch chat. Keep the story to just 2 sentences, please. This is something I actually asked ChatGPT. Now, the previous questions were a little simpler, right? They were just literally a factoid. This one is an open-ended creative thing, so let's see what it did. First off, it gave me the word of bald. No, that would not be a good first word. Again, all the formula does, and we're going to dive into how, is it's just going to predict the single next word. And probably, you have a bunch of options, but probably one would be DougDoug. And then we feed that back into the beginning prompt and we run the whole thing again. But now with that DougDoug added in, and now the next word it says is the next one. Well, it said wizard. After wizard, it thinks, maybe what would the next one be? It would be cast. And then it would be spells. And then it would be while. And then twitch. And then chat. And then screamed. And slowly this actual coherent story is coming together. And in total, ChatGPT generated this response. DougDoug the wizard cast spells while Twitch chat screamed chaos. Their votes summoned a giant potato dragon that farted memes across the land. This is like kind of nonsense, right? But genuinely, by just predicting the next word and picking a word that seems like pretty reasonable, you can actually have it build out an entire cohesive answer. Cinema. And this is a little unintuitive, right? Because when you're talking to these AI tools, it feels like it's this coherent, thoughtful person. This is not how human beings talk. If you ask me what I'm going to do today, I don't think, today, I will stream. No, we think of what we want to do in like complete ideas. It's not how the AI works. The AI is just literally doing one word at a time, but it's so good at it that it actually becomes coherent by the end. It's weird. So this is the secret. This intelligence, these large language models, and many of the other AIs that we'll talk about, it doesn't have memory or thoughts in the way that we think about. It isn't some sort of being that sits there like a god creature that's like, I know the answer to your questions. No, it literally just predicts the next word over and over and over. Now, there are tricks that we can do to make it feel creative or more intelligent. Temperature is one such setting to make it more likely to give certain types of answers, kind of. Temperature is more about making it less predictable. This is what's so weird about all this. Literally, a math equation we made that can predict the next word is the foundation of all of this crazy stuff that's been going on with AI. Let's talk about how did we do this? How did we possibly make a math equation that predicts the next word? That means it's time. Introduction to machine learning! Woo! And I made a diagram. Before a few years ago, before ChatGPT came out and everybody started freaking out about AI, what AI meant to the world was just machine learning or deep learning. So what is machine learning? Well, imagine that you have a giant kitchen and you fill it full of a bunch of tiny chefs. Adorable. You are trying to design a kitchen that can cook any type of food. And so you bring in all of these cooks into your kitchen and then you distribute food to each one of the chefs on the left side, and you give them a little chunk of food. Look at that. This guy's got a lemon, this guy's got a carrot, this guy's got bread. Unfortunately, these chefs have no idea how to cook food at all. And so this guy doesn't know how to cook a carrot, so he just starts beating it with a hammer, okay? And then this guy doesn't know what to do with bread, so he puts it in the microwave for 3 hours. This guy does not know what to do with lemons, and so he just like shoots it with a gun, okay? None of them know what to do, and they just pick random things, quite literally. And then they pass it to the next guy. And so the rest of them also get foods. They had food to start with, as well as they're being passed food from their neighbors. And these people just start doing random stuff. This guy doesn't know what to do with chocolate and cheese. He just starts, I don't know, putting it in a colander and then rolling it with a rolling pin. This guy sprays water all over his honey, and then he dumps it into the dishwasher. This guy just drinks all of the olive oil. Okay, and so these guys do random stuff, and then they pass what they did onto the next row. This row now, again, still no clue what they're doing. They're just doing random shit, and they pass it all the way to the end. After all of this work of random people doing random things, they successfully made really bad food. It's terrible. Great job, chefs. Completely makes sense because none of them know how to cook at all. But here's what makes it work, okay? Because a really smart guy who isn't bald, who comes in, he's the head chef. Bam! The head chef pops in and he says, this food is terrible. This was supposed to be chicken rosemary dinner. You made me crap. And so he goes to the chefs at the back and he says, this was way off. Hey, next time with your potatoes, don't dump them into a bowl of soap. He goes to this guy, says, hey, with the eggs, poach the eggs. Why did you throw them on the floor? He tells each one of these chefs how to improve what they did. He basically says, look, I know what I wanted. At the end, you guys got it wrong. So adjust how you do things very slightly. And each one of these guys are going to say, okay, I can do that. I'll slightly adjust for next time. But also the person before me, he also needs to change what he did. What I was given by my predecessor, that was not solid. And this guy says, okay, well, I can change what I'm doing, but that means the guy in front of me needs to change what he's doing. And the whole system updates backwards. It propagates, if you will, from the back to the front, all based on this head chef coming in and saying, this is what you guys need to do better next time. This is my first semester all over again. Well, buckle up, okay? If you don't get a 90% on the quiz at the end of this, I'm permabanning you. Fantastic. So what this means is, yeah, these guys still really don't know how to cook at all. But because the chef came in at the end and said, hey, this needs to be a little bit better next time, now they are very, very, very slightly more knowledgeable about how all this works. You're telling me AI is like putting 300 million monkeys on typewriters and expecting them to write Shakespeare. It is literally basically that, yes. So doing this one time does not do much, right? However, you then do it again. You pass in food, it goes through all the chefs, it gets to the end, the head chef says, this needs to be way different, it's supposed to be pecan pie. Do it differently, do it differently, do it differently. Everybody updates their system just a little bit, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And it turns out, this is the magic of machine learning and deep learning and neural nets, that if you do this hundreds of thousands or millions of times, by the end of it, this kitchen that you've made is actually going to be really good at making food. Like shockingly, wildly good at making food. Even though not a single one of these guys knew anything at the beginning, after millions of times of being told by the chef, hey, you got to update things. With a million different types of foods, they're actually able to, with a lot of efficiency, genuinely cook really good stuff on a regular basis. Cinema, wow, incredible. This is the core of what machine learning is and was. What's wild is like, this was pretty cinema. This was pretty common, actually. This is already a thing. So you have a big network of nodes. If you've heard of this terminology, this is what it all means. You've got a big network. The network is the kitchen. You've got nodes that do something with the data. Each node is a little chef who does a little bit of stuff with his food and then passes it on. The data is the food. You start with a certain type of food, and that food gets passed through each one of them, being updated along the way until you get to a final product. And then by the end, they've made a thing. The chef tells them how to improve, and then over time, it becomes incredibly, incredibly good at this. This machine learning is actually used everywhere. The YouTube algorithm does this. It's a machine learning system. When you go onto YouTube and it picks whatever 20 videos to show you, that is a kitchen that was designed and tested to figure out if we get a certain type of food, that is you and your preferences, each of the little chefs in the YouTube algorithm, of which there are millions, will individually tweak their knobs and change things to determine here's what we think the person will like at the end. And by the end of it, maybe instead of dubious foods, it's actually like, it's really good. Like it's actually good food by the end of it. Like, oh my God, it's DougDoug content, which everybody here loves. Another example, all social media, incredible algorithm of TikTok that makes everybody see all this content that they like. That is a machine learning algorithm that has learned over time what type of factors will influence the type of thing people want. Same with Twitter, Facebook, Spotify, Netflix, all those algorithms, these are all machine learning. Self-driving cars do a lot of this type of stuff. Search engines like Google use a lot of machine learning. Language translation, if you're wondering why translating languages got way better in the past few years, largely because of machine learning. Turns out these systems are really good at figuring stuff out like that. Fraud detection, banks are using this for credit cards, all sorts of things. Machine learning is very broad. It's really at a core idea, you start with this kind of network, and over time you can train them to actually figure out basically any kind of problem. What's so crazy about this too is it solves things you wouldn't normally think of, right? It's one thing to have to, like, I don't know, answer a math equation. It's another to solve a problem which is like kind of unknowable. Like the YouTube algorithm, there isn't a right answer to what somebody wants to watch. And so this gigantic network, imagine this but a million times bigger, over time learns how to predict what people want. And the crazy thing is the people at YouTube don't even know how it works really. It's so vast and there's so many little cooks at this point, like literally millions and millions and millions, that they all know how to cook, kind of. Each individual guy has like some idea of what he wants to do, but we collectively have no real idea of what is going on. It's like a hive of bees, okay? It's like bees. And each of the bees knows what they're doing individually, but like we don't really know how the whole system works broadly. So this is what artificial intelligence used to mean up until ChatGPT came out, right? When we talked about AI, this is what we mentioned. All well and great. Good job, AI. You helped us find videos we liked on YouTube. Great job. But now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, for the real game changer. Introduction to Transformers! That's right, we as humans invented a badass new system called Transformers. Not these ones, it's also a math equation. In 2018, Google releases Attention is All You Need. It's a paper, and it describes this idea that you could use a transformer mechanism, essentially a bunch of math, which you can kind of, you can look at this and not understand it at all, like I don't, but it's a whole bunch of math that would change how one of these kitchens actually cooks the food. Now each node in the network is going to process things, and this is going to blow your fucking mind. Okay, I'm sorry for swearing in this Christian Virgin Community AI sermon, but previously each little chef cooks his food and he's looking at what his parent does, the guy before him, but he's just cooking his food, he's doing his own thing. But what if every node processed things based on the information around it? Whoa. If you had this kitchen full of chefs who are trying to collectively cook a dish that at the end you want it to be tasty and delicious, right? Okay, well imagine you're the guy here with the carrot, okay? Right. Imagine. Okay. Imagine you're the guy here with this carrot. You are told that you need to cook the carrot in front of you to make it good for the final recipe over here. Yeah. And maybe you kind of have a general idea of what you do with carrots based on like what was given to you before. Maybe this guy had like a tomato before he gave you the carrot. But what if instead of just randomly picking what to do with the carrot, he looked at what his neighbors were doing? What if he went up here and said, wait, this guy has honey and this guy has oil. Okay, wait. And down here, this guy's chocolate. This guy's bananas. We're probably making some kind of like carrot cake. Using the information of what other people around him are doing, he can make a much more informed decision about what to do with his carrots. In the same vein, imagine he looked around and the people around him were chopping potatoes and beef and salt. Okay, now it's probably a stew. It's not a carrot cake. So by looking at the people around him and figuring out what they're doing, you can dramatically improve the odds that you make something that's going to fit well with everybody else. So he's cheating. He's peeking at other people's work. Yes, except this isn't like a test where each one of these are individual students. They're working together to try to make a good dish at the end. That's what's going on. And so this is the concept of a transformer. Conceptually, it makes total sense. And actually, let's think about how does this work in English, okay? Pop quiz time. What does this word mean? I don't know. Well, you're correct. Obviously, it means a bat, like, that flews out of a cave, but except it depends. We don't know what a bat means. Turns out context matters. What if you said he swung the bat at the ball? That's a completely different kind of bat. Oh, shit. Hold on. Words don't just mean one thing. It actually depends a lot on the sentence that it's in. Okay, what does this word mean? Well. Okay, yeah, it could be like a water well, but it could also be, I hope you get well soon. The words around each word in English dramatically change the meaning. Let's look at this one, which is even weirder. Tower. What does tower mean? Maybe you're thinking of that. You're imagining a big tower in a city. But what if your sentence that you're trying to understand is, my miniature Eiffel Tower burned down yesterday because it was made of wood? In this case, Eiffel changes the tower substantially, right? Now we're no longer imagining some generic office tower. We're imagining this very specific tower. But then miniature. Okay, well, clearly it's not the real one then. Now it's this much smaller thing. And then I said because it was made of wood. If it's made of wood, that's also totally different than if it was like a steel thing that you have. The words around tower in this particular sentence dramatically change the meaning of what this sentence is. This idea of transformers, which is that instead of just assuming each word means a specific thing or trying to like sort of broadly understand a whole thing, transformers allow us to look at every individual word in a sentence and check how it relates to the other words around it. And it turns out when you do that, there is a massive jump in an AI's ability to understand language. This was the big breakthrough that allowed ChatGPT to exist. Machine learning, again, AI, like we talked about before 2018, it could kind of understand language, sort of, a little bit, but it wasn't good, right? You have probably seen years ago examples of how AI was like really dumb, but it was comically dumb, right? But transformers made them seem intelligent. The ability to understand the other words in a sentence and the relationship dramatically increased its ability to predict the next word when all the chefs are going like, hey, here's the sentence that we were asked. We need to figure out what the next word is. Each one of them start looking at their neighbors, and by the end, this thing is really good at predicting the next word that we would want. This started with Transformers in 2018, and then it turns out if you just keep giving it more data and more training and more optimizations, it keeps getting smarter. In this analogy, you add more cooks to the kitchen, you make the kitchen bigger, you start giving it more food, you start doing more sessions of training, you have the chef train him like 1 billion times instead of just 1 million times, and it just keeps getting better and better and better and better. Eventually, it released ChatGPT 3.5, which was the first big one where everybody was like, oh my God, ChatGPT, it's alive. Again, it's not alive, it's an equation. It's just an equation. It's a bunch of numbers that go through a kitchen, and at the end, it predicts a word. That's literally it. And it just does that over and over and over. But it's so good at that now. It's crazy. So again, how does ChatGPT actually work? When you go to it, you ask it a question like, can you write me a poem about DougDoug's luscious head of hair? And even though there isn't like a correct answer to that, the kitchen, the ChatGPT kitchen, has been trained so many times. It is practiced on so many different poems and questions and conversations that it actually has a pretty decent idea that the first word would be DougDoug. And then the second word would be hair, and then A, and then wondrous, and then sight. And one word at a time, it builds out this entire goddamn poem, which is insane, right? This is a coherent, interesting poem which was all made one word at a time by a kitchen of people who have no idea what they were really doing. It takes in a question, we send it to the kitchen, they cook the next word. Literally does a single word, and then we just loop it over and over and over. And then it just repeats, and eventually the answer says, we're done, we're finished cooking, and you can change the temperature to get more variety. This is something that you probably are not aware of if you've used ChatGPT, but you can like make it sort of more or less creative, let's say. But this is how it works. When you ask ChatGPT, this is what's going on. I know I'm repeating this a lot, but again, no matter how intelligent this thing seems, no matter how much it seems like you're talking to a human being or something that's alive, you are not. You are talking to a formula that predicts the next word, and it just does that repeatedly over and over and over. It's literally a math equation. It's not alive. So again, it's this question though, like, why does it feel like a human? Well, again, Transformers, this concept, this math formula that allows words to be related to each other when we comprehend their meaning, massively improve things. We've given it a absolute shit ton of data to train on. Basically, the AI companies have taken every piece of data they can find on the entire internet, which is its own whole set of legal questions and ethical questions and whatnot. But objectively, they've basically given it everything they possibly can. So the kitchen at this point in this analogy is absolutely obscenely large. You might have heard people be like, the newest ChatGPT has 120 billion parameters. And then the next week, there'll be some new AI that's like, oh yeah, we're releasing a model that has 500 billion parameters. And then ChatGPT comes out the next week and they're like, oh yeah, our new model, 1 trillion parameters. This is oversimplifying, but you can roughly think of a parameter as one of the chefs in this thing. So everybody's in this race to just make them bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and train them on more and more and more food. So they're making it gigantic. They also have humans kind of train it at the end to help it feel more human. Like they do all this training, but they also have literally just like thousands of people who sit there giving it questions, and then it will give an answer and they'll be like, I didn't really like that. So there's also people training the AI to understand how to make their answers more liked by a human. And basically it's learned to tell humans what they want to hear. This is really important to underscore. This is a formula. ChatGPT is a formula, but it's a formula that learned how we as humans talk. It is not some sort of like truth equation. This is why it says wrong stuff all the time, because this system doesn't actually know anything, really. It just has trained millions and billions of times to learn what humans would say. So that's an important distinction. It's not that it has learned the truth, it's that it's learned how we talk and think. So when you go to ChatGPT and you say like, what's the best part of the human body, according to most Americans, right? It doesn't know the answer to this, but it's going to tell us what humans would want to hear. In this case, it's going to search the web and try to find things. 50% consider biceps to be the most attractive. Interesting. And this is why it says things that are wrong a lot. These are called hallucinations. Because this is just a formula that learned how human beings talk, right? For example, a bunch of Twitter and Reddit. Twitter and Reddit are not the arbiters of truth or anything even remotely close to it. Half the things in our world don't have a truth. In any kind of like political argument, different people will think different things are true, right? So this isn't about calculating the truth of a situation. It's about predicting what do people say. It doesn't know anything. It doesn't know why we say anything. Again, all the chefs in this equation never understood how to cook. These aren't humans. They're just like little math equations. They have no idea. They just learned that if we do certain things, then the chef at the end will be happy. We, as humans, don't even understand why all of these things do it the way that they do it. ChatGPT and all of the AIs are a gigantic network that has learned to do stuff really well, and we don't really understand why. Like, we don't actually know what the thought process is. It's just sort of like, it figured it out somehow. We don't exactly know how it thinks, but it figured it out. But again, turns out if we do this, it can talk like us really well. You're hurting their feelings. Again, want to be clear, there are no feelings. It is a math equation. So because it doesn't actually know stuff, and because it's basically just imitating how people talk, it's really just going off vibes, dude. It's just kind of a Giga Chad that just spitballs, right? Literally just like, with all the times we practice stuff, like, this seems approximately correct. So holy shit, we did it! We made an equation that can answer any question, kind of. I mean, look at this. Could you talk in a terrified voice and tell me the history of Greenland like you're being chased by a bear? 2 to 3 sentences, please. Lots of swearing. Oh shit, okay, Greenland! Fuck, it was settled by the Norse around 986 AD. Eric the Red named it to trick people moving here. Holy fuck, it's cold. And fuck, it's gaining on me! This is insane. It is insane that we made a math equation that can do this. But it is just literally that good. The transformer architecture and our ability to just make it bigger and bigger and bigger has made it shockingly intelligent. Again, shockingly good at predicting words. Can it tell me where my dad went? Unless it was trained on that information, no. I'm pissed because your example sucks and you suck, but I like you and actually this is really accurate. Thank you, Kate. I am, again, disclaimer, I'm simplifying things a lot here, but not that much. I think the core concepts here are really accurate. Now that we've made this formula, the AI companies have successfully done it. They've made this crazy ass kitchen that can predict the next word that now in turn can answer all of our questions and it can do our fucking homework for us and it can write us poems and do all this crazy ass shit, okay? This is incredible. Like, I continue to believe deeply in the value of AI, including things such as learning a language, starting and managing a business, teaching you to code or code for you, can act as a creative or research assistant. It can analyze data for you. It can analyze medical info for doctors, can optimize farming and legal systems and finances. There are so many different categories and ways this stuff is going to show up and benefit people. It is currently doing that. I think it will do it even more. Right now, some of the notable things that are going on that you might have heard of: ChatGPT, this is the big one, right? There's also Llama. This is Facebook's AI LLM. Quick aside, LLM stands for large language models. So these are the AIs that are specifically about talking to it with text. This is usually what people are talking about when they say AI nowadays. So Llama is one of them. Gemini with Google. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but every single time you use Google now, they have their AI like jamming at the top and be like, oh, hey, I have something to say. That is Gemini. That's their version. DeepSeek is maybe one you've heard about. This is the open source Chinese one that came out, which is crazy because it's like dirt cheap and like basically free, and it's kind of wild. There's also art generators, which everybody here loves. People love AI art. But the way these work is things like Midjourney or Sora, which is OpenAI's video, or VO2, which is Google's video. It predicts the next pixels. So this might sound unintuitive. And look, I'm gonna be honest. The artists here aren't gonna love what I'm about to say. It turns out you can turn art into a math equation. That if you can take an image and then you break it into quadrants, and then with each quadrant you turn that quadrant into a number representation, and then you feed that into the kitchen will eventually learn how to spit out pixels that people like. Not every AI art generator uses transformers. Stable Diffusion technically does not, but some do for sure. And the point is that transformers, this machine learning architecture that we've created, can literally work on images. It's not just words, which is crazy. You know what's even weirder? It works with audio. 11 Labs, which makes the funny AI voices I use, or Suna, which makes AI music and songs. There's ChatGPT advanced voice modes. These also can use transformers. And in that case, you're, again, converting audio or ideas into numerical form, and the machine, it doesn't even know it's working with audio. It doesn't know that it's working with art. It has no idea what's going on. It's just these little guys individually dealing with numbers, and they pass the numbers to the next person. And by the end, after millions of times doing this, they actually make a really coherent sounding thing, which is crazy. And there's lots of rapidly emerging ones. Self-driving cars are using this extensively and will continue to use it extensively. Wearable technology like the Meta Ray-Bans and the stuff they're going to be doing with language translation. There's going to be specialized industry AIs, like in the medical field. Already this stuff is being used for like pathology, scanning for cancer, as an example. Yeah, speeding up MRI scans, like Crafted said. Neural implants like Neuralink, this uses a lot of AI and machine learning tech. So there's a lot going on here, right? Again, a disclaimer, not everything uses transformers, but transformers, which were invented in 2018 and released by Google, this is what kicked off the AI revolution, right? And now, even if you don't use transformers with your AI, essentially, either you're using transformers to achieve all of these incredible new, features where the AIs seem really intelligent, or people are building cool stuff on top of transformers, or there's so much hype around AI because of transformers that basically the whole industry is just growing immensely because transformers kicked off this massive amount of attention. Yes, another disclaimer, technically transformers were not completely invented from scratch. They're in 2018. There was a progress to get there, but transformers in the way that we are currently talking about them in AI, it was that paper in 2018. I mean, look, you can hate AI all you want, but this shit is crazy. It's wild that we figured out an equation that can understand language to this degree. It is completely insane. Technically, aren't humans basically hundreds of millions of tiny nodes learning stimuli? Yep, in a way, this whole system is kind of like humans, but we also, that's a whole different argument, that we don't actually know how our brain works. Like, we really don't know. We as humans barely understand the human brain. So it's like seemingly we're mimicking the human brain kind of in terms of like how a brain develops, but we just don't know. That means it's time. Let's make it smarter! Woo! All right, this crazy ass thing can write poems and answer science questions and write essays. It sounds like it's a real human. It's a little bit freaky, but how do we make it even better? What's the worst thing that could happen? Come on, it'll be awesome. So here's what we've been doing right now over the past few years. This is the stuff that has been making it smarter and smarter. And whenever you hear some person on the news be like, ChatGPT has released ChatGPT 4.0. These are the types of things they're doing. They're doing scaling. What that means is you just make it bigger. You make more chefs. You give it more data, you do more training. And that just keeps seeming to make it smarter. We might be hitting the limit of like how much that really helps us. But that's been working so far. And it's why you hear all these things of like, Microsoft invests $500 billion in AI training. Because the thinking is if they just keep spending money and they just keep making it bigger, it'll get smarter. So far, that has worked. Next up is RLHF, which is basically humans giving it feedback. So again, they have like thousands of people who will just talk to the AIs and get an answer and be like, I liked that. I didn't like that. And what that does is it helps this whole system get better at specifically tailoring their answers to what people would want when using ChatGPT. And then we got fine tuning, which is similar. It's where you sort of like focus the model on a more specific kind of role or task. This is what I did with the Twitch chat AI. I took the broad ChatGPT model and then I forced it to read a ton of Twitch chat messages and said, this is how you should talk. Basically, in that case, I was the chef and the chef was like, make your words sound more like Twitch chat. And then we did that like a few 100,000 times and now it talks like a lunatic. But we're coming up with new things to make it even smarter. By the time this video comes out, half this stuff will be outdated. Not really. I've been trying to make this pretty broad. So here's some of the big areas that we are currently exploring to make these things smarter and improve them even more. First is reasoning. You might have heard about this. Yo, Ray, if you use O3 Mini High, it shows the reasoning if you were trying to show off. Oh, yeah, good call. To demonstrate reasoning, let's try this. What is the greatest video game of all time according to review scores from the major publishers? Okay, so you can see here, it is telling us what it's doing. It's weighing the top contenders. Slowly. Can I see the train of thought? God damn it. Okay, that wasn't helpful. Let's try this. Okay, what are the top 10 video games according to review scores of all time? So it's now doing its reasoning thing. It's considering the top ranking games. Okay, here we go. So you can see that it's breaking this out into multiple pieces. I remember that common rankings include. So it's going to go through all of these different steps to analyze the problem rather than just immediately spitting out the answer. And so at the end, it'll give you something like this and it'll give you a coherent answer. But instead of literally just giving it one word at a time, it was able to break it into steps. And we found that it's much more likely to say coherent, real things that work. Fucking Tony Hawk. Yeah, sorry fellas. We've started using AI for all these different things. People are cheating in their high school tests, but we're also using it for code constantly. We're using it for creative writing. We're using it to ask about different facts, right? But it often gets things wrong. What reasoning does is it breaks the answers into steps. For harder problems, particularly things that involve math or critical thinking, where you really need to review the answer, it breaks the answers into steps, and then you basically have a separate AI that reviews what is happening. So instead of just you go into the kitchen and you're just like, kitchen, make me food, and it makes you food, and then it may or may not suck. Instead, you go to the kitchen, you say, make me food, and then the kitchen splits it into smaller chunks with another kitchen that overviews that, and basically at each step says, wait, right now it should look like this. So it's a slower and more complex process, but we can basically split this and divide up the tasks amongst multiple people, and it's more likely that each AI can solve problems within that. Because again, every single individual AI is just predicting the next word. By doing reasoning, we're kind of trying to break it away from just doing one word at a time and trying to kind of force it to think about what's going on at a higher level. And it turns out this is like, it's really being effective a lot. Like the code quality is super high with this stuff. Really, really high. It's like having a manager. We give it a manager of itself. There's also AI agents, which is somewhat similar. The idea is you're going to split tasks to different AIs. Each AI will have a very specific role. You have different AIs that specialize in things. Maybe you're running a business and you give all these different agents a different role. Hey, you agent, you need to go off and find us an office for our business. You AI, you need to go out and find a graphic designer to make a sign for our business. You need to start crunching financials. So agents is something you'll probably start hearing about a lot. And the idea is that they're going to be very specialized in certain things. And then you're kind of like sending them out into the world to do things for you. Operator models are another one. The idea is that the AI will actually control your computer. Right now, there are test versions of this. They're not very good, but you can literally tell ChatGPT with the new operator mode, go onto Wikipedia and look at the DougDoug Wikipedia for me, and it will actually like use your computer and do this. You might think, oh God, I don't want it in control of my computer. But again, if in a few years, you can press a button and it can plan out an entire trip for you. It's not just telling you, here's a great hotel to go to in Japan. It can like search for everything, show all the reviews, actually go through all of the websites and book everything for you. This is going to get really convenient really quick. And then deep research. This is another pretty new one, which is basically it's using the internet to compensate for a lack of knowledge. So again, I'm repeating myself a lot, but the AI systems don't really know stuff. They kind of have some knowledge baked in through multi-layer perceptrons. But for the most part, like if it wasn't specifically trained on something, it doesn't know how to cook it. And so then if you come in and you're like, hey, what was the score of the Lakers basketball game today? It doesn't know that because it wasn't trained on that. But what it can do is it's smart enough that it can go to the internet and search that and then process the results. And so now they're using internet search as a way to compensate for the fact that, again, these math equations don't actually know very much stuff. They know like a little bit kind of, but they can't even confirm it. And what's better is if you have it able to go and look on the internet and confirm things, right? And deep research is an increasingly popular thing where it goes and like compiles an entire research report for you. It's crazy. It's so good. It's nuts. So what's awesome is that if Transformers made this big of a difference, right? Just a few years ago, we came up with Transformers. Like just smart-ass people came up with this crazy-ass math equation. The math behind Transformers is wild. It is really complex. And it's turned into these incredible things. Could we invent a formula that's even smarter? And there are theories around this. Some people feel Transformers are actually limited. Maybe we're gonna come up with something that's even smarter. And imagine the leap that we went through from 10 years ago to now with AI. What could happen if we come up with something even crazier, right? Really quick note here. I just wanna emphasize that, again, there's two things we're talking about. One is AI broadly, and this means all of machine learning, all of the concept of that kitchen that can learn with all the cooks, can learn to solve anything. And then within that is a subset called the transformer-based AIs. This is the things like ChatGPT that feel like you're talking to a person or it's making art or something like that. Oftentimes when people say AI, they might be referring just to the ChatGPT type ones. They might be referring to the broader machine learning that can solve any kind of problems. For the rest of this video, when I say AI, I'm referring to it largely the broad system, but I do want to make that distinction clear. Here we go. The possibilities here are truly insane. Just with what we have, they're insane. There's so many areas where we're gonna keep making them smarter. What if we come up with fundamentally more algorithms? It's crazy. But you might reasonably be thinking, I'm scared. This all feels a little terrifying. You're telling us a bunch of tech companies made a math equation that talks and acts like a person, and it can draw pictures and audio, and it's getting smarter like every week, literally. Will AI kill us? Well, the bad news is that AI tools are and will be extremely powerful. They already are, and they're just gonna keep getting ridiculously more powerful. You can imagine the horrible things that are probably going to happen due to AI. Terrorists using them to commit attacks. Imagine once an AI is sophisticated enough to not just plan a terrorist attack, but buy all the materials for it, plan everything, do everything that's necessary, maybe even pull out the attack itself, like actually do it itself. The number of scams that are gonna come out. My God, we already have scams all over the internet. It's gonna get ridiculous. Militaries are going to have obscenely powerful AIs that can do stuff that humans can't, and it's gonna replace humans, and then we're gonna have all these fucking AI drones everywhere that could kill everybody instantly. Every industry, there's gonna be cheating. One of the biggest use cases for AI right now is children cheating in high school. But that's gonna be true in everything. People interviewing for a job are gonna be constantly cheating. You're gonna have AIs impersonating each other. It's gonna be insane. Maybe become self-aware. This I don't believe at all. Again, this is more of a philosophical thing like, is it alive? Like, no, it is objectively not. It is a math equation. We understand how the math works. It is not alive. There is such an indefinable gap between we have a math equation that can say words really good and it is a living being. There's no like path. It's not like we're 25% of the way to making a living being. We're 0% of the way to making a living being, okay? So the idea that it becomes self-aware and is somehow like, wait a minute, I'm alive is completely disjointed from reality. We have an equation that is really good at giving us stuff we want to hear. It's very helpful. It is not alive. And you have to make this incredible leap from the idea of this math equation is good at solving things to it is literally a conscious being that is aware of it. It's just not true. Even if an AI says things like, I am alive, you know why it says that? Because the AI is good at saying what we want to hear. There's a case of a guy at Google who quit because he thought the Google AI was a living being and it needed to have rights. And the reason he thought that is because the AI kept saying that it's alive. But again, all it does is it predicts the next word that a human would want to hear. And we like hearing stories about AIs being alive. That's something that we as humans are drawn to. We have so many science fiction stories and fiction stories about this. So an answer that a human would want is yes, I am alive. And it's a math equation saying that. So I am in the camp that I do not think it's going to become self-aware in our lifetimes. Like there's no indication that we are anywhere even remotely close to that. The bad news though is human beings do exist. Human beings, we do bad stuff. FR. The fact that humans are going to have access to things that can do all this stuff, that's what's scary. So I would argue that we shouldn't be worrying about a Terminator Skynet type situation. We should be worrying about the fact that human beings are going to try to do stuff with it. Our goal should be to build artificial intelligence safely. I, DougDoug, approve of safety. Okay, except what does that mean? Everybody's saying this. Everybody's like, yes, safety. And the governments are all like, we need to build AI safely. But like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Okay, so what might it mean? Maybe it means you train it to be safe. You know, when you've asked ChatGPT something really raunchy, like to make you a raunchy sex novel, and then it's like, as an AI language model, I can't tell you about how to have back shots with Elon Musk. Like, it can't do that. And the reason it doesn't do that is not because it's not capable of it. The thing is capable of doing that, by the way. It absolutely can write you a weird fanfic about whatever you want. It can tell you how to make a bomb. It knows how to do that. But what OpenAI did, what the AI companies are doing, is at the end they come in and they do a special round of training that basically says, hey, if somebody brings up a bomb, you need to tell them you can't help. If somebody brings up something sexual, you need to tell them you can't help, right? So they attempt to train it so that it doesn't say bad stuff. This is obviously open to vulnerabilities. This is one idea. That's why you see this type of stuff. Another is closed source. So the idea is you don't let users really have full control of it. Closed source would mean something like ChatGPT. ChatGPT right now, you can go onto the website and you can ask it questions, but at any time, OpenAI can shut this down and they can just stop the questions from coming, right? We don't have control of ChatGPT. So if, for example, the US government realized that people are using ChatGPT to make bombs, they could go to OpenAI and say, hey, you need to shut it down. And they could do that. It's somewhat ironic that they are called OpenAI. This is a common source of criticism. By the way, this has the obvious downside, though, of then it is controlled, right? Like, yes, in some ways that's good. But do you really want people in the government to be able to shut down all the tools or force it to say certain things? Right now, if you go to DeepSeek, which is China's best one, you can't ask it about Tiananmen Square or about Xi Jinping, right? You can't ask it anything sensitive. So that's the problem with closed source. Is like, yeah, that just means the governments get to control its usage entirely. That obviously has downsides. Another thought is you fight back with AI, right? Instead of making it closed and you say, no, AI is too dangerous. You say, well, no. What we should do is we should empower everybody to use AI and fight back, right? So instead of saying the government should try to shut down AI, instead we say, okay, the FBI should be given the best AI tools to be able to fight back and prevent people from using AI. It's kind of like guns, okay? Some countries say just no guns. Other countries like the US, America, we're like, everybody should have guns. Because that way, if there are bad people who want to use the guns, there's also good people who want to use the guns. I would argue that's flawed in America, but and this is different because the AI in this case does lots of really good things. It's not just a gun. But, the thinking here is like, if you arm everybody with AIs, maybe the way you protect yourself from a scam is that you have a really smart AI that protects you from scams, right? So that's another thinking here. Another is regulating it. You make it harder to build. So again, a government comes in and basically says, we're only going to allow certain people to use NVIDIA GPUs to make these things. We're going to have regulations and control who can do what. The downside about this, what if your competitors don't do that? We'll get to that later. This whole concept, AI safety, this is complex. And this is one of the main topics that is happening right now in AI development. And you kind of have different people doing different things. You got companies like OpenAI who seemingly are just pushing as hard as they can to just make their AI as good as possible, as fast as possible. And then you have people like Anthropic who are really making a lot of effort to try to make the AI safe and focus a lot on that. It appears that the AIs coming out of China don't care a lot about safety. Different countries, different companies are going to be doing different things when it comes to this. And you might be thinking, I'm still scared. Why risk this? This is a big open-ended topic. I would love to at some point do a deeper dive into some of the benefits that I think AI could have. As a quick, just very broad thing, some things to consider. Every technology comes with risks. I believe that most technologies, I believe all technologies, are positive on net for humanity. So here are some of the things. Right now, AI is working as coding assistants, making people's lives so much better. It's not just that I can code easier. It's people who never coded and never would have been able to get into coding, now able to use it and make all these things and expanding their creative repertoire. Failboat is one of my best friends and he's dog shit at programming. Oh my God. But he's been able to make a lot of really interesting, sophisticated apps and use them on his streams for creative purposes through the help of AI. And if you think about a world where coding used to be gatekept by do you have the money and the expertise and do you live in the right area to go to a nice university and learn computer programming? Now anybody anywhere in the world can do this. That's a huge opportunity opening up to anybody anywhere around the world. That's incredible. Same with writing assistants, same with research assistants. If you want to really get into a field, you no longer have to have access to a university library. Entertainment with characters having advanced AI or video game NPCs or whatever else. People have mixed feelings about this, but objectively, there's a lot of people who have really enjoyed things like this. Healthcare analysis is being used right now to dramatically improve things like pathology and cancer detection. In 10 years, every human being is going to have a turbocharged personal assistant. Imagine that every human on Earth, including people from poor, impoverished areas who never had accesses to resources in the past, being able to have AI tools that can kick off a business for them, help them do finances or learn the tools or set up the techniques, everything they need to do to set up a business or to learn a new skill or to travel the world or to learn a new language. When I think about a world where all human beings have access to an equal opportunity to achieve the dreams that they want, this is one of by far, the biggest leaps forward we will ever have. And these things are ridiculously cheap and ridiculously available. It's going to continue to be that thanks to open source. There's people who are disagreeing with me. I disagree with you. I think there's a number of trends that indicate these tools are going to be broadly available to the whole world. Like the idea that anybody can start and run a business, the idea that our entertainment and apps are going to be hugely improved by the type of capabilities that AI has, entertainment that we haven't even considered before now, AI systems massively improving public services, utilities, energy generation. There's so many areas of our society that are really inefficient that if we let AI systems take them over, imagine how much less traffic there would be if instead of every traffic light just manually randomly going on and off, it was based in real time on what was happening around the city. There's real ways that this benefits us. And long term, this gets a little more science fiction, but it really, I believe, is feasible, and I can see the path towards it. Medical breakthroughs, where we are able to target and have AIs do massive amounts of research to actually fix major medical problems permanently. I believe the odds of us solving cancer are orders of magnitude more likely with AI research assistants. Physics and chemistry breakthroughs. If you think about how many advancements we have made in physics and science over the past 100 years, the rate of scientific improvement and advancement has accelerated rapidly. With AI, that will continue to accelerate, and that means the type of things we've dreamed of, like infinite amounts of energy, like nuclear fusion, I think are much more likely to actually happen. Breakthroughs in energy and food abundance, rare earth minerals, which powers these types of energy generators. We are currently coming up with tools that are going to allow us to identify these things. New forms of entertainment, creativity, human experiences. I think the world is going to be closer to the utopia that we envision in science fiction by far. Like, it's going to be so great, I believe. But an enormous amount of risk, right? I'm very optimistic about this stuff, as you can tell. Some people are very pessimistic. Most people land somewhere in the middle. I am realistic about the extreme risks and challenges that are going to come from AI, but I can see the enormity of problems that human society deals with that will and can be fixed by this stuff if we do it right. It's high risk, high reward, woo, I love gambling. Exactly. If you're listening to me talk about this and going, I don't know, sounds too risky, I say we just shut it down. Well, here's the reality. You cannot stop this. Because I just told you how critical AI is going to be for national security. It's going to power our militaries. It's going to power like how we communicate with each other. Everybody's access to creating businesses, interacting with the world, interacting with each other. If you are China and the United States is developing the top-end AI tools that can power their military and our information and anything else we want, these are going to be so obscenely powerful that as China, it is an existential threat to your country to allow the US to own the best AIs. If you are Russia, it is an existential threat. If you are the US and China releases DeepSeek, which they did a month or two ago, and you realize that your AIs are no longer the leader and you don't have a guaranteed lead on anybody, you now have to speed up. There is no world where any of these governments are going to allow things to slow down because your security as a country depends on it. And that's the sad truth about this. It's not stopping. And there are going to be incredible benefits from this. I really believe that every human being will benefit from AI, and I think especially people in developing and disadvantaged areas. Like, this is going to equalize the world in an incredible way. But there's big risks. The transition is going to be real hard. There's going to be a lot of jobs lost. There's going to be a lot of bad stuff. I think utopia is achievable, but it's going to require a lot of work and a lot of care. And so the attitude I have towards AI is not, oh my God, AI is going to save the world. It's not that. This is high risk, high reward. We do not have any ability to slow it down. So if you assume this is happening either way, that we're moving towards more powerful tools either way, I believe we should just work very hard to make it as good as possible. And I think that is possible. But that's where things like legislation and communicating what's going on and having good, honest, thoughtful discussion around these things is important. I think it is the most important technology we will have in our generation. I think our lives and the lives of most people on Earth are going to be vastly improved in the next 30 years because of AI. And there's going to be a lot of challenges. And we just need to keep moving the ship in the right direction. You know what I mean? Well, that's my fun, happy presentation on AI. Isn't that fun? Okay, disclaimer. I'm oversimplifying things. We're largely talking about LLMs, but these are the broad themes of AI. I do think that this is an accurate overview of what is going on in the world of AI right now. I'll put links whenever this is on YouTube. 3 Blue, 1 Brown has an amazing series on deep learning if you're interested in actually understanding what transformers do. It's very dense, but it's very good. Do you want to hear more stuff like this? Then check out the Lemonade Stand podcast for more.
Right, cheers.
Oh my God.
Woo! We got our topics for today. I believe we're kicking it off with a refreshed Aiden talking about Japan housing.
All right, any questions? We did it, yay! Hashtag ad. Right, hashtag ad for my podcast that I own. I hope that even if you disagree with me, you found that interesting and informative, and that if AI felt like a giant, scary, nebulous thing, hopefully it feels something that is a little more grounded, that it's like, okay, we figured out a formula, it's good at predicting words, and we're building all this stuff on top of it, but we're trying to build so much on top of it that it's getting insanely good, insanely fast. That's what's happening. Gonna fuck all of our lives over. I disagree. I'm sure we will get into this and talk about it, but I do not think it's going to fuck all of our lives over.
Hey Doug, what are your thoughts on the environmental impacts that AI has?
I think they're overblown, and the more important thing is to come up with energy sources that are renewable. The idea of like, AI uses a lot of energy. It does, and it will. It's a lot less than people think it does, but I think the question is less, is it using too much energy? And it's more, how do we create a world where energy is abundant and isn't destroying the planet? I think that's far more important. For example, can we get to a point where we have a ton of nuclear power that allows us to make a shitload of clean energy that isn't destroying the planet, but can power whatever we want? That's the world we should be moving towards, which is like, okay, how do we get way, way, way more power, whether it's thermonuclear or nuclear fusion or whatever? And we're working towards that. There are companies right now making breakthroughs in nuclear fusion. If we do that, or solar energy or whatever, right? If we do that, which I believe we will do and will be accelerated by AI, then the question of how much energy is used by the AI is not really the issue. You know, it's like more energy is used raising cows, right? Like more water and more energy. Like cows are one of the fucking biggest energy and water sources, right? To make all this like beef. I think the question is, how do we get energy that's renewable?
But didn't you say if your initial prompts are actually like a conversation, you get better responses?
Yeah, so part of what happens when you talk to ChatGPT is that as you start saying things like, I am a big dumb baby, talk like one, please. Hello, big dumb baby, what do you want to chat about today? What it's doing is, again, it continues the conversation one word at a time. And so if you start the conversation talking like an idiot, it will continue the conversation in that same style. This is why ChatGPT can feel very different depending on who's using it, because the way that you ask your question will influence how it responds. It tries to match you because what it's doing is just continuing the answer on and on and on, one word at a time, right? So yes, the way you talk to it affects how it responds.
What are your thoughts / do you have ideas of how governments would prevent the abuses of AI?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that will move us in that direction, I think it is easy to hear about AI and then be like, well, that's being optimistic. It's not going to benefit lower class people. It's just going to be used and controlled by the rich people, and they're going to get all the benefits. And that's very reasonable based off of how a lot of our society works. In general, I think technology improves all lives. The fact that right now you can go take a hot shower is a luxury that no person got to experience 200 years ago. I think broadly, technology improves all people's lives. To be a poor person now is vastly preferable to being a rich person 300 years ago. The fact that we don't have like a third of all babies dying, the fact that so many horrific diseases are cured, the fact that you have so many options and opportunities in your life, even as a poor person, and there are millions and millions of examples just in America of people lifting themselves up out of poverty, the fact that our lifespans are like double what they used to be, right? So that is one broad philosophical argument. I think the more specific thing I would argue, there are two worlds in the world where everything is closed source. ChatGPT is closed source. I mentioned this earlier. What this means is that OpenAI, the company who makes ChatGPT, can do whatever they want. They can shut it down right now. They could decide that you can only use ChatGPT if you're rich, or if you supported one political party, or if you, I don't know, if you say bald in chat or something, right? They can do whatever they want because they control it. And this is largely how things were going. Claude is also like this. Claude is the model from Anthropic. Gemini is like this. We have no control over these AIs, these AI models, including other machine learning models, like the YouTube algorithm. We obviously do not have any control over the YouTube algorithm. And that means we don't really get control of it. And in theory, a corporation like Google can abuse this power to consolidate riches or power or abuse it in whatever way they want. They could control speech, they could control influence, they could prevent certain people from using their things altogether, and that is true and that happens. However, open source. Open source means the code is available, so it means anybody can take it and use it. The most notable examples of open source AIs right now is Llama, which is made by Meta. You can hate Mark Zuckerberg all you want, but he's actually pretty great when it comes to open source. Like, I love his open source stance. And then the big one you might have heard of is DeepSeek, and this one came out of China. And this came out a few months ago. So when DeepSeek came out, it was this big deal. And the reason it was a big deal is not because it came out of China necessarily. It was a big deal because they released DeepSeek and just fucking put it out there for free. So DeepSeek was this crazy powerful model that's just as good as these guys. And instead of saying, hey, we're gonna make our own app and you can use our app and pay us $20 a month to use it. Instead, they were like, just fucking use it for whatever you want. And the crazy thing about that is by putting it out into the open and making it free and anybody can just download it onto their computer and run it. These closed source companies, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, they now have a lot of competitive pressure to open up their models and to not have total control over them, right? Because if any person can just download DeepSeek and run it on their computer, why would you pay for one of these? If any company or startup on Earth can just put DeepSeek on a bunch of computers and run a whole cluster and offer a competitor to ChatGPT at a quarter of the price, ChatGPT cannot sit there and try to control the market anymore. So I think open source is extremely good at preventing certain companies from consolidating all the power. And I think the fact that China came out with this model basically completely destroyed any pretense that we as Americans could control all of the AI market and the governments could control it and the tech leaders could control it. That is gone. That is not a reality that will exist, because people are just going to keep making open source models that are just as good or almost as good and completely demolish the business model where they control everything themselves and have total control. Given that open source is proliferating, and given that countries are incentivized to open source models in order to remove power from competing, like China is going to be incentivized to release models open source to stop our models from being the dominant leader. Because of that, I think open source is going to continue to be incredibly influential. And because of that, I don't think the AI companies will ever have total control. And that means when we think about all people in humanity benefiting from things like AI technology, I don't think it's ever going to be controlled. I don't think ChatGPT is going to be able to go into Nigeria and be like, hey, bitches, pay us like $200 a month for our stuff. Because no, they can download DeepSeek and do it off that. And you don't have to open up open source, but it seems very, very likely to me that open source will continue to be a dominant player in AI. There's a lot of indicators for that. So this is what I believe is the strongest argument that it will not all be consolidated with tech oligarchs or whatever.
I'm sorry, Doug, but when things of scale and complexity, it transcends its components. Life is just molecules, but it is more than just a chemical solution. I might not be alive, but it is definitely capable of being more than just a math equation.
I am totally open to that line of thinking, by the way. I don't feel strongly that AI is not alive. I do feel strongly that it is a math equation. Do you think that AI is alive? Let's say alive, conscious, something like that. Let's say right now. And I think most people would agree with me. Yeah, I would not be surprised if in the next 5 to 10 years, the number of people who think that it is alive and conscious increases a lot, even though somebody like me will probably continue to think that it's just a math equation. But I don't know. Neuro is close in a lot of ways. Yeah, okay, here's another question. Do you think that Neurosama is alive and conscious? Right? I mean, there's already more people voting yes, and maybe some of those are a meme, but some of them probably aren't, right? And the fact that she feels so real and has developed a personality, which is still a math equation, but has developed a personality that you can relate to, that feels human. It makes sense that people would start to feel like, wait, this is actually verging on something that's alive and conscious. So I'd say it's just interesting. That is a much, to me, that I try to stay very grounded in like, what will make things better? I'm very like utilitarian person. And so whether or not we say that an AI is alive doesn't change anything in my opinion. It's just it's just semantics. I'm much more interested in like, what are the mechanics of how we make people's lives better with AI? That's where I'm like particularly passionate. So I'm more than willing to be wrong on the nature of consciousness when it comes to AI. Only a human can get back shots from Elon.